Welcome to Season 6 of the RAG podcast. Now, for those of you who don't know, the RAG stands for Recruitment Agency Growth, and this show has been around since early 2019. And every week, we are obsessed with finding out how the world's most successful and innovative recruitment agencies and their founders have got to where they are today. In Season 6, alongside the founder's story and the inside information of that business, I also want to focus on the reality of today's economy. There is so much noise about this inevitable recession that we find ourselves in right now. And where it's going to go, is it really having an impact on the recruitment sector? Are they seeing any change in job flow? Are they seeing any change in candidate control or activity? What is going on? I want to find out. So every single week, I want to forget the propaganda, forget the noise. I'm going to speak to a real life recruitment owner and find out what is going on in their business. I will bring it to you every single Wednesday from 12 o'clock across multiple platforms. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the RAG podcast. On this week's episode, I am really excited to be welcoming a very special guest. This guy is called Laurie Boyall, and the agency he owns and founded in 1987 is McGregor Boyall. For me, McGregor Boyall is a household name, probably because I operated most of my recruitment career in the city of London in the financial markets. McGregor Boyall is over 120 people, 35 years in operation, and is named after the two founders, one of which is Laurie Boyall. Now, Laurie and I didn't know him until I reached out to him to be on the show because it's a brand I've always admired, and he's someone I always wanted to meet and talk to. Annoyingly, we've took 4, maybe 5 times to record this program. This is the issue with remote interviews. The technology can fail and all sorts. So we finally got this episode recorded, and I believe it was worth the wait. Now, Laurie, in 35 years, has acquired so much knowledge, so many interesting insights into running a recruitment firm, and also the honesty of what it takes to build a firm that you truly believe in and that aligns with your personal goals. So he's never been a founder that wanted to exit. He's still got no intention of retiring after 35 years at the helm. And he said, one of the things that stood out about this episode is he said he's never, ever got bored by what he's doing and who he's doing it with. He's always felt it stimulated him. And I think it's really refreshing to interview someone who's been as successful as he is, grows an agency like he has, and still wants to be there, and is not actually interested in the scale and exit conversation that we've had on so many other episodes. So in this episode, you're going to find out about a guy who started his career selling travel, American travel tours in Europe. He then turned into he was a self-taught IT programmer in California, launched a recruitment firm, having never done a day in recruitment in his life, and has since built one of the most well-respected agencies in the UK and specifically in London with international offices as well. Anyone who looks to grow a business either now or in the future, you're going to like Laurie. You're going to empathize and relate to him, and you're going to learn a lot. So let's get cracking. Without further ado, Laurie, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's the second time we've tried to record this, mate. I think it was 30 minutes in when I was in LA about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was brilliant.
The only reason you brought that up, you just want to tell everyone you're in LA all the time. So
that's partly what I'm trying to drop it. But
if you want publicity, fine. Just give me your script, okay? I'll do it.
Well, I do remember how good it was, and then my internet died, and it is. I'm delighted to have you on. But look, I think the name McGregor Boyall is pretty popular and pretty well known. But for anyone who hasn't got a clue who you are, could you just start by giving us the overview of you and the business today? I don't want the backstory, just if the bird's eye numbers and a bit about the company.
We're a mid-market. By that I mean we're not a fluffy search firm. We're not a Nike volume blah 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 firm. We're somewhere in the middle. We're London-based, but we have UK offices. We have international offices. A lot of technology, a lot of it in financial markets, financial services, but we do other stuff as well. So we do in other sectors, but primarily financial services. But we do HR, we do marketing, we do risk, we do compliance. But if you have to say, where's the epicenter? It will be technology and financial services.
Right. And there's about 100 people.
Offices in Dubai and Warsaw, and we're looking in New York at the moment, things like that. So that's us roughly. Yeah.
And is there 100 of you or so?
Yeah, 100 plus, 120 probably now. We've grown a bit over the last, like a lot of people over the last year and a half. Yeah, we always like to staff up just before a good recession. Yeah.
So I remember last time, I want to get into it. You started, what year did you start McGregor Boyall?
87.
That was it. And your story of getting into that was interesting because you didn't work as you weren't a recruiter before, were you?
No. My first day in recruitment, I owned a company. Yeah.
Yeah, that's meant. So tell us a story. How did you get into recruitment? Where did that all happen?
Yeah. For my sins, I was intending to be an academic.
Right.
But although I embraced the life of the mind, I find I wasn't really happy embracing the life of poverty. So I decided I want to make a bit something else. And I used to take a lot of money, tax-free. I didn't say that, by the way. Don't recall that bit. Taking American high school students and university students around Europe. And they were educational tours, the academic bit. So very often you've got adults who came on tours who didn't want to go on a shopping trip. They wanted to go on, visit museums, visit the churches, all that sort of stuff. That's what I used to do a lot of. And one day I was finishing a season, end of the summer, and there was a number of adults coming down. I took them from London down to Rome via all the sites in Europe, the rest of it. At the end of it, he said, if you're ever in American California, come and see us, this guy. And he was impressive because he could do things I couldn't do. He could always get to a hotel in the middle of summer and get ice before I could. If you get ice in Italy, then I for your whiskey and do it, as a punter. That's clever.
Yeah.
So I did that. I went back. I went to America, and he actually meant it. He said, people say, come and visit me. They mean, don't come anywhere near me.
Yeah,
that's what they really mean. But he actually meant it. I went and stayed with him, and he in California, and he says, this is great. Why don't you do it for yourself? Why don't you, very casual, why don't you set up, become your own travel company? I said, well, I haven't got the expertise. I haven't got the money. And he said, oh, don't worry about the money. And that's always a good sign. And then he said, let's go now. Let's go and relax. Let's take my plane to Reno. And I thought, this is okay. I'm in here.
Yeah.
And eventually what happened was we set up a company, did it? Worst possible place in the world to set up, California. Not only is it's not just 3,000 miles, 6,000 miles from Europe. It's 3,000 miles from New York, for God's sake. It's the worst place for volume travel to Europe for poor students. Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened? We were losing money because we couldn't get volume discounts on airlines because these tickets were so expensive. And Californians tend to travel 2 or 3 weeks. But really what we want is volume off the East Coast who's traveling over Easter for a week.
Yeah.
And so you get 10,000 tickets, you get big reductions. We were getting 2,000 pricey tours, but no reductions. So what we had to do was find, and it was literally $150 a head, roughly, to be competitive. And the only way we could find we're doing that, I was in the right place at the right time, is all the big travel companies on the East Coast were using minis and mainframe computers, software houses. We happened to be in the place where PCs were being launched. Microsoft was starting, Apple was starting. It was almost failing by that point before it came up again. And we found $100. I took myself the program and bought PCs and little local area networks no one had ever heard of, and did it myself in the basement there. Well, not quite in the basement, but in the ground floor. But
what did you actually build then? You built
a marketing system, a reservation system, a hotel booking system. Just simple thing, starting small, to scale up. But we found $150 a head. No big hardware charges at all, and no big software company charges.
Wow.
And a guy who really knew what he was doing, an amateur guy, did it freelance. He came in and literally sat down on the PC and programmed it together. And then he went off and I just took over.
Wow.
And I got to know about the rise of personal computing from day one, virtually. Then what happened is after 4 years, 5 years, the company didn't go near because it got hit by terrorism. You cannot take students, universities, and schools to Europe when there's what they call a government advisory from the American government. It means you can't get insurance.
So what year is this? The early 80s then? This is.
Yeah, it was 87. It was Lauro. There was a hijacking of a liner. There were various things. There was TWA and Jordan things. People read about in the history books when there was young as you, and people as old as me have lived through them. And it just got hit. One day we had thousands of passengers, next day we had 4.
Right.
Not 4,000, 4, And then I thought, this is it. I certainly had a good time in California, but it's time to come home. I had a girlfriend who keeping that going for 6,000 miles. She's now, the mother of my children and all that. And managed to keep it going. It was time to go back. And I came back, as I keep on saying, I came back to Gatwick flying first class, all the champagne in the market, because I used to buy airline tickets. That's what the job was. You got free travel. Also, I was a terrible flyer then. And so I'd get, I imbibed a little bit before I got on the plane. So I came back, hungover by the time you get back here after the 13-hour flight. I was at Gatwick. And I was there in the arrivals with about 12 suitcases, all my possessions for 3 years. No job. Nowhere to live, a girlfriend who was late, so she looks like she, saw her prospects diminishing or my prospects diminishing, and there I was. I had to do something, and the only thing I could think of doing, because I didn't want to become an academic, I didn't want to become in the travel industry, I've done enough of that, I liked the computer bit. I was hooked on that side of it, the PC side, not, mainframes in the basement, all the exciting, innovative stuff at that time. And I thought, how do I get a job? And silly me, naive me, I'll go to Yellow Pages, and it's a computer recruitment. And I went through the computer recruitment process, and it was appalling, absolutely appalling. That day, there was no email, by the way. It was pre-internet in a sense. I faxed off my CV to a number of people. They faxed it, I must have faxed it, copied it, faxed it off. I got calls saying, these people want to see you. Can you arrange your own interviews, please? Do you know anything about the jobs? No. Okay. What they know about me? Well, what you said to us, your CV. So I went along to 6 interviews, and I remember 3 rejections from big banks, half of course, and 3 decent job offers from sales companies. And one of them was actually providing new technology training to investment banks, designing it and delivering, training the trainers and delivering the first courses to the high-level users. Yeah, they had no idea what a computer was. I mean, I'm talking about directors of banks. Suddenly told you've got to learn to use a computer. You've got to know what a spreadsheet looks like. Wow. And their thing would be quite literally to go and, well, I'll get my secretary to do that for me. And that world was changing, but they didn't know it.
Yeah.
So I was learning those things. Then one day, being nosy, like there I knew I could be a recruiter, because all recruiters are nosy. We know about that. And I saw the invoice for my replacement fee on the FD's desk. And I thought, effort-free, skill-free way of making a living.
How much was it? Can you remember?
Oh, it's tiny. I mean, it must be 4K, 20. Well, I was probably on 18 to 20,000 when I came back. About 4K now. This wouldn't get you into commission range. Yeah. But that's the way it was. It's just what happened. So one of the people I was working with, his wife was in recruitment or HRE recruitment already. We got together, just talked about it, and I went back to California for some more money, please. And that she, that's the McGregor partner, Laurie Boyall, McGregor and I got together, got the same funding, and Bob is your uncle, etc. I was away, and I didn't know what I was doing in recruitment, but I knew a bit about technology, and I was in the right place at the right time.
So the guy in America, obviously he backed you, he liked you, he trusted you, and you're this.
He's a mentor. He's the ultimate angel.
But you're a ball of energy who's done pretty well. But what did he say when you came over with the recruitment idea? He obviously, what was his counter argument?
He said he was deep into computers himself. He's one of those guys. He was like 10, 15 years older than me, so he's probably, I was in the 30s, he's about 45. He went back to school with computers at the weekends. He built his own hardware, he got bits and pieces. He taught it, he knew the program. He just thought, 2 things. Either sounds exciting, and number 2, is there money in it? Yeah, and the answer was yes, it was exciting, and yes, there was money in it, and this money. So, say first day in the job, I owned a bit of a recruiting company, and then I learned on the job. And what happened, of course, is I thought I'd end up doing the technical side because I knew about technology and interviewing. I ended up actually selling to new technology companies.
So let's go back then. So when you launched McGregor Boyall, take us back to the first, like, what did it look like on day one in 1987? I'm a 1-year-old child at this point. So it's, I wasn't in LA at that point.
I wouldn't say to you what I'm going to say to you. It was a shit show. The reason why, actually, 1-year-old children know quite a lot about that, don't they? The reason why is quite simple. You get funding. We've got funding, we've got money, got it from America. It's great. But what happened was you needed, even though comms, what do you need to be a recruitment consultant? You probably need a telephone, no mobile, you need a landline, you need mobile phones, whatever. And then you had this newfangled thing called faxes, which you couldn't have about £2,500 each at that point.
Wow.
You couldn't raise money. So these weren't little 95-page jobs, So you got all those things, but you need a fax line, a telephone line. And virtually the day we set up, and it was in Windsor, by the way, for historical reasons, because partner McGregor couldn't work. Shows we thought anywhere near a previous company in London. British Telecom went on strike. BT went on strike. And they wouldn't install new lines, and they wouldn't repair broken lines. And that, if you dependent, you're literally burning through cash without being able to do anything. So
you said briefly there, and I remember when we discussed last time, you said you started in Windsor because just backtrack a bit. Why did you start in Windsor?
Well, she worked for a company, and she had a restrictive covenant. She couldn't work within 20 miles of her existing company in competition. And so we respected that. We thought, and the lawyer said, well, technically, And this was in the good old protective sort of practices days. So we set up in Windsor, and lo and behold, day 2, they said to her, well, if you need an interviewing space, you can use our offices if you like in London.
Oh, wow. So where were you both living? Were you living out there? Or?
No, we were both living in West London, so it was a reverse commute.
Yeah.
That was the easier bit of it, But it's still a commute. You don't need a day. You don't go travel to the car unless you have to on the M4. But we were in Windsor, and actually, I come back on that story, but actually it was a godsend by mistake. I'll tell you why in a moment. But when we set up, we had no telephone line, and luckily, right outside the little office had was a red telephone box.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It worked because they weren't repairing lines. If it didn't break down, you were fine. But if it broke down, they wouldn't repair it and you're dead. But we didn't have anything, our new lines, they weren't installed or working. So what I had to do was quite literally go and grab the telephone poles, put an out of order sign on it, literally out of order, and monopolize that telephone box. Now, it's so long ago, I'm trying to remember how it worked. And the way it worked was, I made the calls out, and if someone said, I'll give you a call back. So, no, I'll give you a call back, don't worry. Because the incoming was always a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
But I had to keep it permanently out of order. So every time I went back in, I had to put the out of order sign on it again, and then come back and take it off and do it. So I think it's about 3 weeks.
3 weeks?
3 weeks of...
Did you ever get to a point where someone was just in there and you were like, oh, crap, hurry up.
Well, why do you go into the telephone box out of order? Because it says out of order on it.
Yeah. It's very clever. Very clever.
It's...
Where were you getting the numbers from?
Necessity, that was the only option until the strike was...
Where were you getting the numbers from? Were you using the Yellow Pages at that point?
Oh, Computer Weekly Computing, the old magazines in those good old days used to have... It was ambulance chasing. It was the ads running. Have you had any response? Can we, blah, blah, blah. It was raking over the embers. If you want to know a way of not setting up a company, we did it. Okay. It was mature mainframe software, essentially, run by same adverts, time after time. No internet advertising, classified ads. So it's all really expensive publications, and it wasn't going to work. But here I come back to the Windsor, the old part of it. At that time, Windsor was in that corridor, the M4, M3 corridor, where American software firms set up.
Thames, near Reading.
It's not a Silicon Valley because nothing's ever made there, but it's a sales operation. It's the old joke, well, it's not the old joke. American software companies set up near Heathrow. That's what they did. Fly in, the VP International could fly into Heathrow. But it's not like I used to say they built Heathrow near Windsor Castle. It doesn't work that way. We'll build Windsor Castle near Heathrow. But there happened to be one really successful American software company in Windsor. Okay. And it was the first ever spreadsheet, proper spreadsheet, Lotus 123. It's an old thing called Lotus 123. Eventually they made Lotus Notes, it was bought by IBM, but it was, it got crunched by Microsoft and Excel eventually. Microsoft was the the giant squid, whatever you want to call it. But it was very successful at that point. It was the application that built PCs as business tools, because they were perceived before that as word processors.
Yeah.
But suddenly when you put Excel on, it became a business tool, and Microsoft realized that, and IBM realized that, they jumped on it. They were in Windsor. They were set up in Windsor as their headquarters, their European headquarters. So what I did, I went around with what used to be called compliment slip, things you had about. And I went round and I sat in their reception and asked to see their HR manager. And he came down. I can't believe it. He came down and he said, and we chatted, and I said, I know I've done this stuff with, I understand Lotus wanted to. He said, okay, he said, well, I'll give you a trial vacancy. He said, we're looking for a sales support secretary. Okay. And I thought, okay. He said, I'll give you a go. And we found him a sales support secretary to work for the sales support manager, the hotline manager, post-sales. Yeah. And that was the first placement we ever did.
How long was that in the journey? Can you remember?
That was about 3 days before we ran out of cash. It was that sort of about 4 to 5 weeks.
And the American guy thinking, is this going to happen?
Yeah, no, he would have hung in longer than that. He always said, how long is it going to take to make money? I said that. He said, okay, let's double it. He realized he'd been in businesses he's funded them before. But that, within a year of that sales support secretary, we were doing most of their salespeople, most of their marketing people, and quite a lot of the high-level marketing people throughout Europe for them. That was our launch customer. That was the airline that said, okay, we'll try your new Boeing or your new Airbus. Yeah. That was the one that counted. It wasn't the anchor client, the opposite, it was the launch client. And they got us going in. What was interesting is that after a year, we wanted to be back in London because I think a big bang was going on, had gone on in 86. So the banks were hiring like that. That's where the money was in recruitment. And it's like the old-fashioned thing, why do you rob banks? Because that's where they keep the money. Why do you go into recruitment in London? Because that's where the banks are, there the money. Yeah. A lot going on. And we moved back into London. We took up this big first mobile phone we ever had, which was a big lump of brick. It must have weighed about 5 kilos, as that temporary phone address in this tiny little serviced office we got. And we realised, and it was still hard.
Was it just you and your business partner?
Yeah, there were about 5 of us by then. Right. It was still, it wasn't big, but it was, bigger than just 2 of us, 2 and a half of us, our assistant AA. But then what happened? It was going nowhere, and I thought, what are we going to do? I think there are certain times, most companies, you bet the farm. Sometimes you have to bet the farm. You have to say, "Oh, we bet the farm."
What do you mean? Bet the farm?
Well, you put you put everything on one. Just everything on one last play, roll of the dice, really. Right? And what they did was what was different about us, we knew about end-use PC computing, serious, worked for a key player in that market. And so we put together a list of candidates with those skills. Okay. Print it, because there was no internet. You couldn't email attachments and things like that. Literally mailed about 1,000 of these 16 anonymous key candidates, these skills, to the banks. And we were flooded with response. They had this new technology stuff, these PCs, these client server, these local area networks, and the applications that were with them, the word processing, the Excel, the beginnings of the data.
So the world you knew was starting.
Yeah, it was the world I knew. It was the world that was coming rather than the world that was past. Our competitors were still in them. We're living the past slightly. Yeah. So we were ahead of the curve. And it's always hard to be that, because there's all these things about bleeding edge, leading edge. At what point you jump in on the market? If you're too soon, like the pioneers, the arrows in the back. If you're too late, you missed it. So you have to time it. We have to time that one right. Luck and judgment, but no looking back after that. No looking back. He just took it.
So what was your role like in the business over the next, say, 5 years?
That's it. I thought I was going into someone who knew about technology, can interview candidates from a technical perspective, talk to clients at the technical level about what they wanted, whatever. What it became was a bit like I'd done in the academic thing and the tours. It ended up being not what I intended. So I became the salesman and the general manager and a bit of everything. It's like the old adage, experience is what you end up with when you set out to do something else. It was like that. Okay, I set out to do one thing, I ended up doing something else. And I became a general manager, a growth engine, a salesman, marketeer, good marketing. We were innovative in our marketing as well. We were the first recruitment company to put posters on the tube, and then Canary Wharf, before Canary Wharf, and then in Canary Wharf. It just wasn't seen as the right thing to do. It worked brilliantly. We put adverts into new newspapers, graduate things. We just did things differently because we had to. But then it became exciting. That was part of the fun, doing things differently. So there you go.
Where do you think you got that sales edge from? If you were,
that was simple. That was simple. I went to when I was doing the international travel bits or the American travel. One of the things they used to like to do when you were a tour guide, with your nice English accent, the American company, the ones they're all on the East Coast, most of them are in New England, somewhere Boston, or somewhere near Boston. They used to come back and spend, we'll pay you for a couple of months to sell, because all the nice people you sell to are teachers, because if you get 5 kids to go, the teacher went free, so it's via teachers and lecturers. They love an English accent. They just love a British accent, okay? So while I was doing this tour guiding and academic, I used to go to Boston, sit there and telesale to American teachers at home.
Yeah.
And so I'd end up calling time zones. You just call your way through America as they woke up. And you end up calling people at home and selling tours. And we used to do a bank of us, about 20 of us, lovely little British accents, very posh, it sounded very posh, with a sales manager, which I'm just absolutely. And this guy, actually, he was a British guy. He was Scottish, a bit mad, but he used to have a hunting horn, and his training process. If you said the wrong thing, you get the hunting horn, you squeeze it in your ear, that little boom like that. You have this big klaxon in your ear, that hunting horn, and you learn to telesale. You learn to sell. But what was really interesting about that was it gave you a sales technique, because those could be acquired. But it was the first time I realized that selling is a profession. It's not something to be ashamed of.
No.
I agree. If you're a sales bloke, in the UK, in England, at that time, and even now a bit, if you go and meet the parents, the future parents, they're a bit disappointed. It's a salesman.
Yeah.
In America, it's an honourable profession.
Of course it is, yeah.
And in America, if you start up a company, if you haven't started one up and failed already, then you haven't even started yet. It's not, selling is not dishonourable, and starting up a company and failing is not dishonourable. Just go again. Whereas in England, always a salesman, always a bankrupt. It's changed. It's a lot better than it was. But that's what I learned in America wasn't the technique of selling. It's to stand up and be proud of selling. It's a profession. You're providing a service. Don't be ashamed of it.
Yeah.
Don't worry if you go bust. I kind of gone bust in the first one, not bad, but there you go. So that's what I really learned from there, and I learned it in cold calling telesales in America.
And what impact do you think that confidence that you obviously showed in the early days of McGregor Boyall, what impact do you think that had on the business? Both
it was very good. That let's call it can-do attitude. Yeah. It allowed me to launch it, stay with it, believe in it. It's possible. It's doable. We can do. It's very good for startup and early growth mode. I've always said and continue to say, up to about 30 employees, I was the engine.
Yeah.
Past 30 employees, I'm not sure that I think I became perhaps more the problem than the solution.
So let's talk about that. What point did you reach that 30 employees? How long into the journey was it?
Very rapid. We had 5 offices in 6 years expanding.
Wow.
So, and when you haven't got a lot of money, you're paying for office space. It's a service business. It's not like software. We didn't invent Google, or we didn't invent Facebook. So we probably got to 30 in 3 years,
Yeah.
So no, less than that, 2 years, two and a bit years. And then we got to 50 or 60 in 4 years, something like that. And all of that was no acquisition, it was all internal growth, it was organic growth. And also there comes a point where, if you want to go into Uber growth mode, you probably go private equity and all the rest of it, not angel money. And so I just made choices there that I didn't go for an equity flip. McGregor was 37 years old. I didn't have selling it for early flip or making fortunes. It was more for me to do with independence.
Yeah.
It was to do with raising fast sums. I'm not saying I do regret not having set up Facebook. I'd rather, that wouldn't have been bad. I've got over the disappointment, cushioned by the billions. That would have helped.
I've got a couple of questions going through my head, but the first one is, what were the symptoms of you being no longer the solution? Like, tell us what sort of signs were there when you got to a certain size that perhaps, like you say, you went from being the engine. And I think this is a common problem for recruitment founders and business owners when they get to a certain size. So what starts to happen, or what do you start to witness to know that things are perhaps not quite as they were?
Well, the simple one, and probably the least, where you just start dropping the ball things. Entrepreneurs are. I'm not really an entrepreneur, but people who run companies, set up companies, are slightly emotional dysfunction. We're all a bit challenged.
Yeah.
Control freaks.
Yeah.
And if you can do it all yourself, you think, you can think you can do it all yourself, and B, even when you haven't done it all yourself, you think you have done it all yourself. So there's that degree of unrestrained ego that happens. Number two is that to spout a cliche, our greatest assets are our people. Who doesn't say that?
Yeah.
Who actually says, the reason we've grown is actually I don't give a toss about the employees. No one ever says that, do they? They say, but if you are a recruitment consultancy, be honest. What recruitment consultancy that is unique, that actually does something that nobody else does? If you can name it, great, because I can't. You can do it a bit better. You can insert some quality. You can do it with one thing, but essentially the process is that you're governed by it. It's about the quality of the people. It's who does it, as opposed to what's being done.
Yeah.
And so it's like law of legal firms. It's about the quality of the consultant. Okay. If you haven't got that right, then everything else is going to go wrong. And managing recruitment consultants, managing people, is actually what sustains the growth. It becomes the hardest thing. Most over time, the most difficult thing of running a recruitment consultancy is actually having good people, managing them, retaining them, motivating, all those good things. Markets, they're really important, and we're about to find that one out, I think. But you see your way through a market if you've got the right underbedding, or you run a consulting firm. Imagine what a legal firm would be like if you actually can all the lawyers to save money. Yeah. Not much of a firm. Same, don't dispense with that awareness to people and the time it takes. And so where I became the problem is that unless you got the time to spend all the time, that much time individually with in larger numbers of individuals, it will crack, it will creak. And I didn't understand that I only had so much time, and I didn't platform that in the way of an HR director or a people director early enough to scale properly.
Right. So you didn't build the foundations. You didn't build the foundations around you.
Yeah. And also, I'm a bit impatient, and you end up with more haste, less speed. You're impatient with people, but you have to be patient with people to grow further.
I'm interrupting today's episode to mention our sponsor. Talent Ticker are here to help everyone who are in such a candidate short market, right? So if you're looking to grow your recruitment business in 2022, candidates are important, and Talent Ticker are here to help. What they do is they help recruiters work smart and not hard. They've got over 300 agency clients, recruitment agency businesses that use Talent Ticker, and that helps them connect to the right person at the right time for the right reason. Okay. It also automates a lot of monotonous tasks we use and provides simple tools to identify ideal and off-the-grid candidates, people that are under the radar, for open roles. So if you like the sound of finding more deeper level talent that's not exclusively on LinkedIn, for example, then get over to www.get.talentticker.ai/Hoxo. You'll find the link in the episode. Go and take advantage of the special offer they've got on there for our listeners. Would you say you had that natural? Because I often find that, I mean, I think I can empathize with what you've done in I'm not saying I've done it anywhere near to the level, but the early days of being the engine room and the visionary and just going out there. That's me, the sales guy, the person that, I started a business in an area I've never done. And, I've done that. But I don't think necessarily I am the best people manager. I don't think I'm a bad people manager, but I'd say if I took me and my business partner and I analyzed our skills, he is definitely a more well-rounded structural leader of people than I am, How did you find that going from being the kind of, the superstar out there, rainmaker to having to look inward most of the time? Did you?
I think I ducked the issue, avoided the problem for a while, or not by running away from it, but trying to overcompensate or displace it. I'm a decent salesperson. Evidence would say that. It's not me trying to beat myself up. Evidence would say that. But I'm a better marketeer. And what I tried to do and did was, if you can't manage the push, the salespeople, try and really grow the pull, the marketing, the brand.
Yeah.
So I try to actually let the brand do a lot of the heavy lifting. Yeah. Rather than having lots of people on phone selling. It's a different approach. And then really, ideally, you should have both.
It's exactly what my business model is, right?
I remember the guy I sold to eventually, who was the European CEO of this Lotus firm before it got crushed by Microsoft or by IBM. He was a marketeer by training. He was actually a nuclear scientist by training, became a marketeer. And I went into his office to talk about building a European marketing team. But he had a big banner over his desk. He just said, nothing happens till someone makes the sale. And he was a marketeer that was sensitive and genuinely appreciated good salespeople, as opposed to thinking they were a bit better than salespeople.
Yeah.
And marketing departments can think in FMCG maybe that's right, but in the business
you get a lot of both. You get the both ways, don't you? You get the salespeople that don't respect the market and they think they're just.
Well, I won't tell you. But I will one day. I will tell you what I think about old-fashioned marketing in certain industries. Okay.
Yeah.
How old-fashioned, if anything deserved to have a Me Too movement put all over it, it was that.
Right.
That type of marketing. I'm not going to refer. I've got a phrase for it. I will not put it on this podcast. But I've got a phrase for it.
So you start to spot the signs are there, the symptoms are there, and you're 30 odd people, 3 years or so in. What did you then do to make change, and how did the business evolve moving after?
Well, you can argue over that period of time. It hasn't changed. It's 3 times the size, not 10 times the size.
Yeah.
I still think, to a certain degree, we want to remain a privately owned company run by the people who own and manage all the rest of it. I've got a right-hand woman called Jenny Pitt, who's my AA, our admin assistant. When we started, the two of us, Kay and I, and her part-time. She now has been for a year. She's still here. She's finance director. She's a natural finance director. She's tight to life with her money, counts it all. Blah, 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 blah. Fantastic. She did a lot of the HR stuff, PR, just get to know people, and people know that. She, absolutely handed her back office. It runs. We have a fantastic back office system. We have, pre-employment screening for contracting. The actual controls we have, and it's just fantastic. I didn't have to do that anymore. I didn't have to program any of that anymore or anything. Like, I programmed our first recruitment system.
Yeah.
I couldn't resist that one, could I? But eventually, you grow, you buy an industry standard one, and thing. Hired in some good people, some good consultants, and let them do some of the growth. So I had the last 10 years, I had a fantastic group people officer, people, chief. I don't know what the title is anymore. She does it, and she's also run P&Ls in her own time and run sales teams. So she's not sidelined from the business as a sort of support operation. She's core and central to it. I couldn't keep the company together without her. So you have to learn to share, you have to learn to devolve, and then make your mind up. Do you want to go for the fast growth and the sale? Do you want to stay in it? Do you not want to stay in it? You have to align your medium and longer term goals to actually what you really want.
So when did you start looking at those goals and thinking, so 37 years in now?
I think what happened, well, I got sidetracked, at a certain point, it became a lifestyle business.
Sorry, 35 years.
But when I say lifestyle, I don't mean it went up my nose. I don't talk about that sort of lifestyle business. I had kids. I had teenage kids. I had a son who's good at sport. I spent, far too much time watching my son play cricket in far parts of England, when I should be in the office doing that. So it became a cruise control.
What years would you say that? What years were they?
Oh, God, let's think. He was actually 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 to 15 years, that space when he's coming, he was between the ages, which they start to talk to you and which they finish talking to you. So what's that, 10 to 16, something like that?
But realistically, would you say that, you should have been in the office, but actually, isn't it amazing that you managed to see those moments?
Yeah, yes, it is. There's nothing wrong with lifestyle businesses if you know why and what. You don't abandon or ignore things, or maybe a little bit of that did, but not totally. So I've always stayed in a bit. I'm I align my goals and ambitions, and they've more or less stayed aligned. Why do you set up a firm? Why do you keep it going? Why do you cease at that firm? So the output, the end goal has to be aligned with what you want from it. I wanted somewhere I could work in where I was independent. I've softened, I've calmed down a bit as I got older. But when I set McGregor Boyall up, my phrase about myself was that I was unmanageable, going on unemployable.
Right.
So I was at that point, I had to make a call. What I would do, longevity, all the rest of it, yeah? And I wanted something that gave me independence, gave me no boss. I'm a terrible employee. I wouldn't wish me on anyone, okay? And I wouldn't employ anyone like me or keep them employed, okay? Because I was stroppy, obstreperous. I was, I'm not, I don't share my toys, properly, So I had to find something where I could stay and keep myself occupied and keep myself engaged. And I'm absolutely, ancient as I am, absolutely engaged by McGregor Boyall still. Now, there are all sorts of perversities about that. Because what have I gone through? If you look at it, I've gone through a setting up all the crap that comes in the startup and the tensions. Yeah, I've gone through a .com. I've gone through a millennium, a .com bust. Okay, I've gone through a global financial crisis. I've gone through a pandemic, and I think we are about to hit a big wall. I suspect it's bigger than anyone. It's not a standard recession because it's been compounded by lots of things, including financial mismanagements going on right today. If you look at what's going on in the Bank of England today, how they've had to step in again. And if you look at all the PE firms are being hit and all the fund, all, for example, a lot of high growth recruitment, small high growth recruitment firms have been PE backed, coming out of the 2021 recovery. They've hit a wall. They're hitting a wall because the PE firms have hit a wall that were behind them. And there's going to be a big shakeout coming, not just no jobs from the clients or fewer jobs, but also the funding, the cash that's keeping going, grow or die. There's been growth now. They could tend to die very quickly. I think it's something, and I don't, there's a bit of me that my attention's been kept up by being involved in crises. It's like my wife says, she said, Laurie, you're a good crisis manager. Just it's really unfortunate you create most of the crises yourself. But these ones aren't. But I'm not looking forward to a recession. It's going to be horrible. I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But it will engage. It will keep senior management and me in here engaged and get us through that. But we've got in our terms, I'm happy because I know what our balance sheet looks like. No one can look at one company's house if they want to. We've got a lot of cash, so we'll see through this. I'm glad I'm not asking a bank manager for a bit of
for some support. Well, just to go back on that a bit, like you made a point that said, like your life is always you kind of made very conscious decisions around where you. So, like, if I look at my situation,
okay, I think that makes you sound maybe I can a bit more controlling than I was. There's a bit of me that, followed the money. There's a bit of me that I like to think that sort of almost cold-heartedly made sort of forensically analysed decisions. I'm impulsive as well.
But what I mean though is that at a period of time you decided that, you know what, this is a part of my life I want to experience with the family. Therefore, I'll take a slight step back, right? And I look at this year for me. I've got engaged, I'm getting married. I'm buying a house. Hopefully I'll have a baby in the next 12 months. That's kind of my mindset. I've got two stepkids now. So like the business has been brilliant, but there's also been a huge foundational year for me where I'm like, investing in other things, and you can't be 100% at work when you're doing these things, right? And then again, I'm coming into this period of my life, but I imagine it'll ebb and flow. There'll be periods of time where you can be more focused, and others where there'll just be natural distraction from outside of work. How have you kind of kept in tune with yourself to make sure you're giving the right amount of attention at home, at work, in different areas?
What is an age thing? My kids are older, so as they move off and move away, you just take advantage of the time you have got with them. About that. It's like they say, it's always good to talk to your kids while they still know everything. So that helps. But then also been really lucky. I live out, my wife and I, we live in central London, right in central London. We live King's Cross.
Wow.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's very convenient for our kids who also live in London, their own places. But if they've gone out for a night out in the West End or whatever, they're to rock up and stay. So we see a lot of our kids still, but it's convenient. So I haven't had to make big choices, either or. It's actually been and.
Right.
And so that's been lucky. But you just got it comes. I don't say it comes naturally, but it comes organically over time. There are moments. I think there are periods, not moments. Periods of I'm high intensity with the firm, and other periods less so, and other people are picking up there. I don't. I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I haven't got that. Intensity. Okay, I just haven't got it. And that's why he's Mark Zuckerberg. And the great thing, one thing I can say about me is, bloody hell, he's not Mark Zuckerberg, is he? And that is absolutely true. I think you have to know what you're in it for and what you get out of it for and why you're doing it. And then you can reconcile it with having a single firm business, That's what I've been lifestyle. I've only had 4 employers in my life, and 2 of them have been me. So
what happened to your original, the McGregor of the McGregor Boyall? What was the situation?
She and I realised that we had different goals and different directions. She wanted to do a different type of firm. It became obvious, and my phrase, the one I use, is not so much we had 2 captains on the bridge. We had 2 different compasses on the bridge.
Right.
Saying north was in a different direction. Each one gave you a different way to go. She, I think, I know, would much prefer to have a high-level search firm, executive search firm. McGregor Boyall really took off financially when I said, let's go and do contracts as well as permanent recruitment. And they're different, different directions, different compasses. Build a contracts business or build a search firm. At that point, it was just they weren't the same.
Yeah.
So we had to. I brought her out.
Yeah.
And she went on to set up the first firm. I can't remember, but she did. So good luck to her.
What year was that?
It was in our first, second, third, fourth office. Wait, hold tight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th office. So about 5 years in.
Right. So you've had about 30 years of being your own boss.
Yeah, for better or worse.
Yeah. What are the pros and cons of being the solo founder, leader at that level?
You tell me. You're about to find out. You're probably going through it now. But
I've got a business partner. I do share 50.
Responsibility. Everyone else in that firm that you're running can come and ask you for advice, around shoulder guidance, command and control, or they have a colleague they can go to and moan about you. Yeah. At the same time, they can moan up. Who do I moan to? Who do I ask about? Who do I talk to? Some people have executive coaches.
NEDs and stuff.
Yeah. I've tried that. It doesn't really work. It hasn't worked for me. And I wouldn't, it would be executive coaches. What a job that is. Having clients, know-it-alls for clients, and so, and that's the thing is, it's not loneliness, I suppose you want to call it that, or that sense of you're one of one.
Yeah,
that's the hardest thing, and making sure that somehow or other, you look in the mirror and see what's really there, and you listen to what you're saying and actually say, yes, I am talking sense, rather than, you get away with murder if you're a boss. You can be a nice way, you can be absolutely Victorian, paternalistic, but it's still, you've got to be careful. You don't turn into Stalin. Okay, don't.
Yeah. When it comes to the journey and the trajectory and the vision, what is it about the business that made you stay at the helm and not look to sell? Because I've interviewed over 200 people on the show. I'd say 90% of them say they want to exit at some point. The grand sale. I've talked to people who have sold. I've talked to people that have just MBO'd. There's a very glamorous vision for most founders to get out of there almost as quick as they can. A lot of people. So what's been your reason for not?
Isn't that strange? I don't know the answer, and if you find out, can you let me know? But it's independent. Who would give up independence? And independence for me, I don't want to play golf.
No.
I like traveling, but as anyone who's done a sales job traveling, after a point, you've got to know traveling is a nice, interspersing traveling is great. Being perpetually on the road, trying to get sort of a fix for the latest flight is very hard to do.
Yeah.
I think, I'm engaged by it. I'm intellectually engaged by running the business. It is not a down market. It isn't about growth for its own sake. It's about delivering a good quality product, keeping it there, keeping it aligned to the market. Technology is quite interesting. It changes things. It not just changes what other clients use, but how you work the world itself. I'm just intellectually stimulated enough. Business is a creative thing to do. People, you want to be a business or you want to be creative. Business is creative. You have to think on your feet. You have to think, look around corners. It stimulates. And I've never been unstimulated. I've never genuinely never been bored by what I do and where I do it. Okay.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant.
Well, it's brilliant. Or it's a shortcoming. I don't know. Maybe it's a fault. I don't know.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a brilliant thing to live life and be stimulated is possibly what we're all striving.
There are people like financial engineering. They do it for an equity flip. That's the joy of building, sell, build, sell. Rinse, repeat. And for me, that would be rinse, repeat. But for them, it is. Each one is. It's going like I was safari. You shot. Sorry about that. You shot another line.
Don't worry about it.
Fantastic. It's not why I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I was in when I was in LA, which I was.
Oh, you were there?
I was in LA, yeah. When I was there, I was in a cab. I got an Uber. Interestingly, about 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, and my brother's texted me, and he's in Peru at the minute, and he says, "Go to this place, Buffalo Wild Wings." So I jump in this Uber, and I noticed the guy's the oldest Uber driver I've ever had. He was 87. I found that out, but he was nice guy. Said hello. Anyway, I said to him where we're going. He goes, do you know where you're going? I was like, yeah. And I think so. And he goes like, just bad idea. He's like, this place was shut down last year. The mall it's in for too many shootings. He's like, a white tourist in this area. I just don't think it's a good shout. You can do what you want. I'll take you there, but I'd say don't go. So I took his word. Anyway, so I said, let's go back to the hotel. So it was a slightly longer journey. And I'm really grateful because we spent about 30 minutes chatting in traffic. And 87 years old he started a real estate firm and then he created a property development firm and he sold both and he retired at 58. So he said it was the worst decision he's ever made. And I said, why? And he goes, because, I had a great time for a few years with my friends, and then they all died on me.
Yeah,
No, he said it. But he literally lost he had 12 friends that all retired at a similar age, 60-ish, and they all died on him. And now he's like, and now I'm driving Uber 6 days a week, not for the money. He's loaded, right? But
yeah.
we can meet people, and like he had such a good chat. It was brilliant. But he's like, and if I still had a company, I wish I still had my company. He's like, I'd rather be in there for 3 hours a day. Like you said, stimulating my brain with people that So I never thought of it that way. I never. I think that whole vision of retirement and exit is like financial freedom, sit on a beach, do what you want all day. Like it sounds great, doesn't it? But there's people that say actually once you realize that it's very unrewarding. It's incredible.
I can't. I'm trying to think what the opposite of what I've done in my life, and the answer is sit on the beach all day. That's the opposite. I can't imagine it. I can't sit on beaches. I don't do it. Something happens, and my body rejects sand, and I'm off. I can't help it.
Can you sit still though? You're the type of guy that can have a relax.
I can sit still. I can read. I can listen to music because there's some sort of engagement there.
Yeah.
But looking at the side, remaining the same shade of blue as it was half hour ago is not my idea of engagement.
So how would you describe your input in the business now in terms of time, the different things you're doing? Give us
I've stepped back from the front.
Yeah.
I don't see clients. I haven't seen clients for years. I've become much more operational. I've given into that bit of me that likes programming, that side of it. So I've gone systems orientating. I'm quite interested in how we're pulling together marketing automation with our database system and with our analytics system, which sits on top of it. And that's intrigued me in putting that stuff through. And I also think marketing over the next 12 to 18 months, marketing can come back into the frame a lot, as opposed to last 12 to 18 months. It's been, the last thing you want to do in marketing, because you might end up with more vacancies that you can't fill. That's what it's been like. Yeah. I think the opposite. So, that's going to be a business response. It's not idle, it's a business response. Communication. I was once told by someone who just worked for me, but just read their book on management. There are 7 modes of management. And one of them was management by communication. And he said, that's what you are, Laurie. You're a manager by communication. And I said, what about the others? He said, you haven't got those, so don't worry about them. So, okay, communication is important. That's the other thing is I don't have an office. I sit on the floor.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to be with the people. I walk the floor in the afternoon. I walk the floor in the afternoons up to about pre-lockdown. No point walking the floor on a Friday here because you won't see anybody. But people used to be footmarked on the floor. But I just walk up and down talking, but then doing formal communication, just talking to people, and writing the communications as well. That's where I see my input really now. Yeah. The only selling I ever do now is to convince people they should join McGregor and work for the firm.
So you still meet every final?
Not every, but I meet a lot. Yeah. And I'm asked, a lot. That's an indicator. I meet a fair few, but I'm asked mainly by directors and our group people director, can you help get this guy, can you help me get this woman over the line? Okay, so that's the selling I do, and that's the most important thing because they're the repeat business.
Yeah. Incredible. So one of the things I wanted to talk about this season is the recession, right? And the reality of it right now and prediction, right? So obviously you're sat with a bird's eye view on the business and I want to find out your predictions. But if you took the thermometer right now and looked at, say, job flow, CVs out, all the metrics you're measuring, is it changing? And what are you seeing right now in the business?
Yeah, they are changing. It's getting metrics are becoming important because for I would say not the last 3 months, we can begin to see you can see a little bit of change, but previous 15 months before that, you didn't need metrics. You knew the jobs were coming in. All you had to do really was duck, just in case you got any more. Finding CVs was hard, but that was searching, that's not the metrics. Now the metrics are changing. the mood music is changing. On the client side, vacancies aren't new, even new vacancies, actually vacancies being reworked slightly, you can just sense it out there. We can keep productivity up, CVs sent out. New jobs actually staying up, yet the numbers not being heard yet.
Yeah.
But you sense the quality of those numbers, right? And that's a qualitative control, not an analytics control. But I think the numbers will start being hit shortly. You can actually experience tells you that these numbers are fragile rather than robust. They may look the same, the totals may look the same, but you just sense they're fragile. I had this, I think I was going to put it on LinkedIn. My indicator of when you're at the peak of a market and the recession is now here is the Financial Times has a publication every weekend, very glossy, it used to be called How to Spend It, slightly distasteful title, How to Spend It. It's now called HTSI, which just strikes me as a pointless change. But this week they actually sent through a thing on Friday saying our edition is really thick this week, so we won't be putting it through your letterbox in case it crumbles. So we'll be leaving it outside on the doorstep. And they did it on Saturday. They found time and said, sorry about this, you're moving it on the doorstep. And the reason being, that publication is about 100 pages of glossy advertising, of which 45% is about men's watches. Okay, and when that supplement, the FT, with all its fashion and all its men's watches, is thick, that's the peak. That's the peak. It's all downhill from now, and that's happened before.
Is that because they're trying to generate their own revenue?
Yeah, it is simply, there's too much gloss around, there's too much advertising going out there at the high end, and that's the end of a boom. That's the last sort of hurrah, that's the band playing at midnight.
So then what do you think is going to happen, and what sort of timelines would you put on things?
I think the UK is going to be, there's going to be a very difficult period. Someone said that we had a meeting, a management director meeting last week, and we all say, should we be actually focusing on finding difficult to find candidates, or is it the jobs? And someone, one of your natural optimists chirped up, I think we're going into a position where it's going to be hard to find candidates, and it's going to be hard to find jobs. Oh, great, brilliant. We can all go home then, can we? It's going to be that for a while, because there is still a shortage of good candidates out there who are willing to move, but the jobs are going to be becoming tighter. So it's going to be a double whammy for a couple of 3 months. Then you can see the jobs come down and the candidate market easing, but fewer jobs. Recession, I think there'll be a recession. I think there's no way out of it in the UK and Europe, and increasingly it looks like the US next year. Which is early. They thought it might be late 23. It could be the first Q1, Q2 US recession. Just too many, perfect storms going on out there. Just too many of them. And I think it's not if, it's the depth and the length of the recession that's coming, and whether they're synchronized global or not. Okay, so there will be certain areas that avoid it. I think the Middle East will avoid it, the region, because the oil price will be such that will sustain a deep, but it's not big enough to be influential in our business. It's good to have got a Dubai office and Saudi and the great things, like that, but it's not enough. So I think it's going to be a difficult time. That old cliche that came last time around, when the tide goes out, we'll find out who's wearing swimming trunks. It's going to be one of those tides going out for a bit.
Yeah.
So people have to earn their money. It's not shooting fish in the barrel anymore. It's going to be, and it could be brutal. I'm doing the dress to troops, a short one tomorrow morning, talk about what I think might be coming around the corner a little bit.
What changes would you make as a business? What would be the obvious things you'll do to make sure you're fit for it?
Well, I can tell you what we are doing, which is we are continuing with our hiring plans. We put our hiring plans together at the end of 21, 7 months in. And they weren't we're going for a triple. No, there weren't PE hiring plans. Okay, we're going to triple in size in the next 10 months and hire and fire, churn, and all those things. That's not what we are. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're sustaining those. I think there's enough out there to be got if you go and get the right people to find it and deliver it. And also, we know what our cash reserves are. You know, we can see our way through it. So that's what I'm sustaining. People, it won't be easy, but it's sustainable. Don't overhire. Don't, you know, going for growth right now. I'm not going to go, well, here's going to be an opportunity in the market. And the old phrase, you know, it's criminal to waste a good recession. You know, well, that's not my, you know, sometimes recessions are, avoid them if you can. Don't just gleefully go on and say, you know, it's wonderful. I'm not looking forward to a recession. I like a good crisis, but I'm not stupid enough to think crises are good for the soul. They're not. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough. I think you've got to think about staff retention. You have to think about what people are thinking out there who work for you, what's going through their heads, especially younger people. We've hired people who come into recruitment after lockdown, not even during, after lockdown. They have no idea what could hit them. Yeah. Now, I could make all sorts of comments about, you know, Gen Z are about to find out what life's really like, you know, but I won't make those comments, you know, but they are. It is going to be difficult.
Well, one question I have, which I've asked on most of these episodes, is what do you do about expectation management? So if you think about it, for someone who has joined the business in lockdown or post-lockdown, or even your guy who's been in recruitment 10 years and has had his record year or 8, how do you set expectation based on you must be used to certain people performing at a certain level yourself as a company. So do you go, we look at pre-pandemic levels now as our expectation of 2023, or do people just have to work harder to stay where they were? Like, how do you approach that?
Well, as I say, we've got a fantastic group of people, director. We've got someone who works for her as well, we have a continuous monitoring system. A monitoring system like we inspect, it's actually, PDRs, personal development reviews, and we're doing it directly. What's appropriate? What do we expect? People, it's the old cliche, no one should ever get fired by surprise. That's going to happen because people know what's going on. Transparency is so critical now. And it really is critical now because the world, for especially the first time in, not people who've been around pre-pandemic, but come in since, they have no realistic idea of what could be coming, what the world is normally like in recruitment. They're in one market. And they're not going to believe anyone who tells them otherwise. Okay. In theory, they'll say yes, they'll nod, but they'll be going, yes. They're really shaking because they can't believe it and they're going ahead. And we have to decide, is someone up for it? Are they up for it? If they are, how do you support them? If they're genuinely up for it, how do you support them? Because you've got to get through. You can't bleed your staff out. Or you're left behind, as everyone's found out. I can't recruit after the pandemic. And the pandemic is that was the most dramatic anyone's ever seen, including chancellors of the Exchequer who are relatively right-wing Tories who turned out handing out so much money like a left-wing government. And you say Richie Sunak turned into Jeremy Corbyn, didn't realise he was doing it. And that's fine, I know where I sit on the political spectrum, and it's not Mr. Sunak. So that's okay. So it's going to be an interesting one, a tough one. I am not more or less optimistic, more or less optimistic. I'm just thinking it's going to be a bit more dramatic and severe than I thought initially. Okay, about it. I thought it was coming, but I thought it'd be a flattening or relatively shallow, relatively short. I'm not so sure that's true anymore.
Interesting. What's the vision then for the long term? So if you look at as far as you can ahead for,
I don't look far ahead. I think 24 months is the way I would look at it.
Right.
I'm not a vision person. I don't have visions. Quite literally, the way I'm not retiring, so that's that. And I've got to keep on going. I make sure my health is as good as can be, or whatever. The firm's in good hands in terms of succession planning, all those good things. But I'm a first responder. I don't see we're far ahead later. I guess that when I can see something that needs doing, and that's money in there, get there quickly. But I'm not a creator. I'm a first responder. Okay, right. And that's what The 24 months is enough for me.
So where do you want to be in 20? If we were to bring you back on in 20, which I'd love to, in person.
I'd like to be established one way or another in the US in sufficient muscle to respond to the recovery. Okay, because there'll be a recovery after the recession in the US. And when the US recovers, my God, it recovers. Okay. You know, all that.
What have you got out there now? Anything?
Nothing. That's a great thing.
You're not even got your old basement in California that you could get people into.
No, I wouldn't go that far. I go East Coast. You know, we are not pure tech in the sense of California tech and Silicon Valley. We're financial markets, hedge fund, algorithmic trading tech. You know, we're, as I say, we're two postcodes. We're Broadgate and Canary Wharf here. They know we want equivalent. It isn't, by the way, it's not all New York anymore. So many are going down to Florida, and Chicago is still good for trading. We're putting our foot in as everyone else is just, catching a cold. And I'm quite looking forward to that. And then hopefully we just about got it right by the time the market comes back in a rush. And it tends to come back with a rush in the US. All the can-doism, or we can do it againism of the US. That's it. That's a bit you admire. That's where I really admire.
I love it. Right, last question, and I'll let you go. So when I'd say the majority of listeners throughout this show have been people that are either at the very beginning of their journey as a founder, or actually those that have not even started yet. Now, there are lots of people listening all over the world that are established as yourself and, at different stages. But I'd say the most questions I get asked are from people that are really in the early days. So if you had to give 3 words of wisdom or 3 pieces of advice based on the 35 years you've had
Jesus Christ.
Just 3.
One.
Yeah, well, whatever you can give.
I'm lucky to find one. Have some idea of why you set the firm up and what you want to do with it. Why did you set it up? Have you set it up to make money, get in, get out quickly? Have you set it up to have, like I did, I didn't probably realize it, but have a lifelong involvement with it and align what you do operationally with those goals and get them right? So if it's going to be rapid growth and get out and sell, then realize that what type of journey that will be. And they'll tell you what it'll be. It'll be rapid growth, but it'll be a lot of turbulence. Okay. And strap in, and you'll be fine. If on the other hand, you want a longer journey where you get to cruise control, you get to the right altitude, you get to cruising altitude, then prepare for that and have your hire people and treat people the way that's appropriate for that. Because it's all about the people. It's not about business plans. It's about a recruitment firm's business plan is its hiring plan. Okay. Paper clips don't count for a lot. Okay. You can get serviced offices. It's about people costs, people planning, people hiring. Anyone who forgets that won't run a successful recruitment company.
Yeah.
That's the only one. It's about people. Isn't it cliche? Isn't that how great? It's real. That's it. That's what's going to make you money, or what's going to actually send you bust.
Yeah. That's it. That's what people need to think about, right? That's it.
Yeah. It isn't, and it isn't. Yeah, it isn't. And also, by the way, stay engaged. Don't do it as a pure money spinner. Okay, you can try that. And some people do that, and it's fine. It's right for them, but they are so rare compared to most people who are going to be a bit longer than they thought, and they've got to make sure they don't screw themselves. Okay.
Yeah, I love it, Laurie. Bit of pleasure. I'm so grateful we managed to get this in. I know we've been trying for a few weeks, and we've had a few false starts, but if anyone does want to reach out to you after listening to this, because there's potential of that, where can they find you? And would you be open to a chat with people?
They can find me on LinkedIn, as long as they can spell my name right, Boyall. There aren't many of us on there. Yeah. So they can do that. Reach out. It'll be fine. Good to hear.
Reach out on LinkedIn. All right. I'll tag you in everything that we do. Laurie, it's been a pleasure, mate. And we'll get you on in person in a couple of years and see if you realize those ambitions, okay?
Okay, fine. You take care. Thanks, Joshua.
Thank you, as always, for listening to today's show. I truly, truly hope that you got value from it. That's the only reason I take time every week, is to ensure that my audience, future and existing recruitment owners, are learning from each other to make this industry that I love so much stronger. Today's episode was brought to you by Hoxo Media. I am the CEO and founder of Hoxo Media, and we are the world's leading content marketing and personal branding agency for recruitment businesses specifically. So we are working with over 200 agencies and 2,000 recruiters right now, both managing the brands, producing content, building written, video, podcast content for niche recruitment agencies all over the world, as well as coaching at a desk level individual recruiters in your businesses how to be better on LinkedIn. That's how to brand themselves. That's how to produce content. That's how to use the opportunity on LinkedIn to get traffic to their profiles and turn that into business. We're coaching people all over the world every single day. If any of that sounds of interest, please do visit www.hoxomedia.com or drop me, Sean Anderson, a personal message on LinkedIn. I would love to talk to you. I'll see you soon.